And Deputy Ellis, you have 5 minutes.
Gorau Mahagot, time on Buyat Clark, our son on PMB show. We support this motion and welcome any moves to discuss solutions for families struggling with distressed mortgages and them desperately fighting to keep a roof over their heads. One crucial support for distressed mortgage holders is MABs. The need for such a service is not quantifiable, and many of those who have benefited from their services can only sing their praises. We need more resources for such a service, for free advice to struggling borrowers. Any such service should be funded by the banks. We also need a binding code of conduct for how banks deal with distressed mortgages. This code must include strong guidelines for banks in dealing with buy-to-let mortgages and the responsibility to the tenants who depend on the property for their home. We cannot allow more people to be made homeless due to a repossession or the threat of a repossession. One-year bankruptcy would be a positive step and be in harmony with the north of Ireland. The insolvency services must be given more powers to act, and courts should be mandated to consider their proposals. I would like to mention the continuing problems for people with shared ownership mortgages. 16,500 shared ownership arrangements were entered into in the state. With shared ownership mortgages, half of the mortgage is being paid off on a monthly basis, and the other half is being rented from the local authority. For the tenant or mortgage holder to buy out the local authority, the value is rising according to the day's prices, and the council rents keeps rising. People who took up shared ownership mortgages, particularly in the Dublin region, entered into the scheme with the expectation that they would eventually own 100% of the property as soon as finance is permitted and within a short period of 2 years or so. The downturn changed all that, and many people in shared ownership mortgages ended up with considerably less income coming in the door than they had when they started out with the scheme. This is not unusual for people with normal mortgages either, but after all, the shared ownership was a scheme to benefit people who could not get credit from commercial banks and needed support to get a house. A lot of shared ownership mortgages have now gone into arrears. Many families were afraid they would lose their homes. Some, thankfully, have managed to make use of the all-too-narrow mortgage-to-rent scheme. Last year, it was announced that €20 million would be made available to bring shared ownerships which were distressed into the process from mortgage to rent. This scheme was very slow to take off, as it was very narrow with specifications for houses and a protracted process of engagement, which meant many people who would have liked to avail of it could not or failed to do so. As of last month, just 88 mortgages to rent arrangements have been completed. These 88 have all been taken over by approved housing bodies. Speaking to people in Dublin City Council, only a handful have, but not a large proportion of those in distress. With thousands of shared ownership schemes in trouble and 1 year on from the announcement of the €20 million fund, it would seem not enough has been able to or encouraged to take up this process. This remains a serious issue that needs tackling. There is, though, no one solution. Local authorities should be funded to take full control of these homes, buying out the half owned by the residents and renting it to them as done under the mortgage to rent scheme. The mortgage to rent scheme must also be prioritised, and residents who are in distress must be made aware of the scheme and guided through it. We also must look at freezing or reducing rents for shared ownership in order to give some relief to people who have lost their jobs or have a reduced income and are able to make mortgage payments but are struggling with regularly rising rent. One of the biggest obstacles facing people losing their homes is access to social housing and not being allowed on the housing list, which is happening right across all the local authorities. More mortgage write-downs should be utilised, as well as split mortgages. Nobody should face eviction, and it's an indictment on our society that eviction is even considered at all. Thank you.